Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are taking a journey into an America that never was, yet feels terrifyingly real. Stop for a moment, forget the history books you know, and just picture 1962. The world isn't recovering from the war. It's cemented under the terrifying rule of the victors. The U.S. is a continent just carved in two. You have the East brutalized by the technological superiority of Nazi Germany, and then the West, the Pacific states of America, existing in this state of uneasy subjugation under the Japanese Empire.
It's an overwhelming premise, and the sources you've gathered today, these fragments of life, notes from spies, and the private thoughts of the conquered, they provide this incredibly rich, textured view of what living under such a regime actually means. Our documents come from, a pretty diverse cast. A fastidious American art dealer who was just desperate for status, a Jewish-American factory worker clinging to an alias, a high-ranking Japanese trade official navigating these dangerous politics, and an Abwehr spy risking absolutely everything.
So our mission today is really to immerse ourselves in this bizarre reality. What's the architecture of power in this world? I mean, how does the constant stream of propaganda affect daily life and commerce? And maybe most profoundly, when external reality is built on a monstrous lie, how do the characters in this world find truth or order or any kind of guidance?
That last point is absolutely key. The fundamental conflict here is, well, it's threefold. There's the obvious clash, between the conquerors and the conquered, but then there's this existential, simmering geopolitical tension between the Axis powers themselves, Germany and Japan. And finally, there's the deeply personal, internal struggle for authenticity, for morality, and for survival that's being fought by every single individual character we encounter.
Okay, let's unpack this. I think we have to start with the environment our characters inhabit most closely. That's the Pacific states of America. This isn't just an occupied territory. It's a meticulously structured society built on a clearly defined and often agonizing social hierarchy.
Yeah, the sources immediately establish this clear and rigid social caste system in the PSA. At the very apex, you have the Japanese elites, the officers, the diplomats, the trade mission officials like Mr. Tagomi, and these affluent collectors like the Kasuras. They hold the unquestioned higher place. The power dynamic is, it's just not negotiable.
Right. And the white American population is forced to navigate this whole structure with this crippling anxiety. And it's not a monolith either. You have the Pinocs, the white puppet government officials in Sacramento who are just utterly despised by everyone.
By everyone, including the Japanese who control them.
Exactly.
They're collaborators, They're seen as having forfeited their honor. But then you have figures like Robert Chilton, the art dealer. His entire existence is a desperate daily performance aimed at avoiding the humiliation of being deemed low place.
I mean, the detail in the source material about his anxiety is palpable. It's incredible. We see him meticulously reviewing his mental notes, who to bow to, when to nod, when to feign ignorance. He has to bow to every Japanese person he encounters.
Which, on a busy day, could be hundreds of times.
Hundreds of times. And this isn't just about survival. It's about maintaining this really fragile sense of personal status. Chilton treats the puppet American officials, the Pinocs, with this, surgical precision. He does the necessary bow, but then he consciously looks straight through them, trying to convey through sheer force of will that they are non-persons, that they're beneath his attention.
It's a tiny, passive act of rebellion and self-aggrandizement, really.
It is. But the hierarchy, it plunges into much darker territory when Chilton reflects on those below him. He's riding in a pedcab, a classic symbol of enforced low-wage labor, and he's being pulled by a Chinese driver, who the source calls a chink, described as hunched over, sweating profusely. Chilton internally admits he could endure the scorn and contempt from the Japanese above him because that's just the price of doing business in this world. It's expected.
Right, that's part of the deal. But the fear of contempt from those beneath him, that is what truly paralyzes him. He's terrified that a damn black slave lurking around, or that the Chinese pedicab driver might see him carrying his own bags, and that would confirm his loss of status. And this reveals the core psychological damage of the PSA. The subjugated white population is so desperate to maintain the illusion of racial superiority, even a broken, defeated version of it, that they cling to the idea that they are still somehow above the black and Chinese populations.
It's a society that is poisoned from the top down. The victory of the Axis powers didn't get rid of racism. It repurposed it.
Yeah.
And it placed the white Americans squarely in the middle of a new, terrifying pecking order. The fear of dropping to the absolute bottom dictates every polite gesture, every piece of clothing, and every single conversation Chilton has. It's a masterclass in the psychological toll of occupation.
And that desperation to prove one's culture and education is most acute when he's dealing with the Japanese, who, ironically, are not content merely to rule. They are obsessed with consuming the very culture they just defeated.
Yeah, here's where the sources get into that bizarre paradox of the Japanese fascination with Americana. Why bother conquering a country if you immediately start fetishizing its lost innocence?
It's an incredible market. Children's Store is presented as the premier location on the coast for this trade. And the desired items aren't statues of generals or these grand symbols of power. They are objects of profound and often, well, trivial nostalgia.
We're talking about butter churns, right? Ice cream makers from around 1900, fully restored 1929 Fords, things that represent a vanished, almost idyllic American past. And then you have items like the ultimate sensational artifact, the mummified head of Mr. B-Bill.
It's just this mania for the peculiar and the specific.
But this is more than just collecting antiques, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
The sources note a legalistic fascination with documents, proclamations, ads. Again, imagine a Japanese collector dedicating their free time to gathering newspaper advertisements for patent medicines from the turn of the century, or seeking out a specific Civil War recruiting poster.
It suggests they're attempting a kind of cultural autopsy, trying to absorb and catalog the essence of the defeated nation, not through its high art, but through its bureaucratic and commercial ephemera. They drink from English bone china, eat with U.S. silver, and admire New Orleans jazz. They are trying to own American culture by possessing its relics.
But this ravenous demand for the authentic past inevitably creates a massive contradiction.
A forgery economy.
Exactly. When the culture is consumed so obsessively, the supply of genuine artifacts just dries up and the market becomes flooded with fakes.
And the WM Corporation, which on paper makes iron ornaments, is the engine of this forgery. Its real profits come from mass-producing perfect copies of pre-war American artifacts, Colt revolvers, historical sidearms, all designed to look exactly like the real thing.
The genius, or I guess the sickness of this system, is that it's entirely self-perpetuating. No one in the trade, especially the dealers and the high-end collectors, wants to estimate the true percentage of fakes in circulation.
No, of course not. The sources describe this perfectly as Gresham's law in action. The bad currency, the fake artifacts, drives out the good, the authentic artifacts, by fundamentally undermining the concept of value itself. Everyone is colluding in the delusion.
And the man who runs this whole operation, Wyndham Matson, who looks like a tenderloin bum but has this cold philosophical mind, offers a devastating intellectual defense of forgery. He attacks the very concept of historicity.
It's a profound moment. He pulls out the famous example of the two Zippo lighters. They're physically identical. One, he claims, was allegedly in FDR's pocket when he was assassinated, making it worth $40,000. The other is just a cheap replica.
And he challenges his companion to identify the real one, to feel the mystical plasmic presence or aura of the historical object.
And of course she can't.
Of course. His argument is brilliant and it is so cynical. The object itself has no inherent mystical historical value. A Colt .44 is a Colt .44, defined by its bore and its design, regardless of when it was made.
The value resides entirely in the paper, the certificate of authenticity, the documentation supplied by the museum or the dealer.
So he's arguing that memory and provenance, the story attached to the object, are the only things that give it value. And if you can fake the paper, you can fake the value. There is no soul in the object. It's a total repudiation of any spiritual or historical connection to the past.
And it perfectly justifies the mass-produced lie that sustains the entire PSA art market.
Which is why the inevitable consequence for Chilton is so devastating. The bubble bursts when he sells a Colt .44 Civil War sidearm to a Japanese admiral's gentleman.
Like that.
This gentleman, who is actually one of Chilton's white American peers, immediately spots it as a fake piece made by Frink, the Jewish factory worker hiding his identity while working at the WM Corporation.
And Chilton's faith in his entire stock is instantly shattered. The source likens it to a primal childhood awakening, like the moment a child questions the authenticity of their own birth certificate. His whole reality, which was built on the assumption of genuine value and status, just collapses. He realizes he is operating a store full of mass-produced lies, and he's being used to perpetuate this cultural theft.
And this crisis of authenticity is the perfect bridge to our next subject. Because if the Japanese Empire is sustained by mass-produced lies in the art market,
the German Reich is sustained by mass-produced, industrialized horror on a continental scale.
right, this local fragile crisis of authenticity is completely dwarfed by the cosmic scale of the German operation. Let's pivot to the true technological and ideological behemoth ruling the other half of the world, the Reich.
The sources immediately emphasize the overwhelming scale and just the sheer speed of Nazi technological dominance. We're talking about a world where the speed of travel and the scope of engineering projects are just utterly breathtaking.
The technology is terrifyingly advanced. The Messerschmitt 9E rocket, making the flight from Stockholm to San Francisco in 45 minutes. That's a casual detail that tells you everything you need to know about German superiority. They control the air and, crucially, space.
They've achieved flights to the moon and, even more fantastically, to Mars. As one source puts it, they have realized the oldest yearning of mankind, our finest hope for glory. This isn't just military might, it's a profound, almost spiritual claim of mastery over the physical world.
And this ambition manifests in these gargantuan engineering projects, all powered by atomic energy. The prime example is the draining of the Mediterranean Sea project Farmland, which Childen, in a moment of detached, conquered admiration, describes as a work of sheer genius.
It's the scale of their vision that is supposed to inspire awe, even in their enemies.
This technological leap is tied directly to the Reich's economic organization. Albert Speer is credited with orchestrating the USA's economic revival under the German system, which is centralized, efficient, and ruthlessly planned.
Right. The sources contrast this with the Japanese system, noting the German contempt for the foolishness of economic competition. They believe efficiency and control override everything else.
But beneath the gleaming rockets and the efficiently planned economy lies a crime of unimaginable proportion, the African Holocaust. This is where the sheer horror of their ideology, stripped of all humanizing elements, is revealed.
Frink, the Jewish factory worker living in constant fear in the PSA, he reflects on this catastrophe with this visceral revulsion. Africa is described in the sources as a huge empty ruin, a land for the ghosts of dead tribes. It was wiped out by the Nazi experiment.
Frink's internal revulsion compares the Nazi worldview to that of prehistoric cannibal near men, not in the sense of crude barbarism, but in a focus purely on utility. He sees them as the first technicians, only concerned with adaptation and reduction, making drinking cups from enemy skulls, utensils from leg bones.
And specifically adapting a big toe joint for a quick-acting cigarette lighter mechanism.
The horror isn't just the death, it's the cold, technical removal of humanity. The Nazis don't see humans. They see material to be repurposed. The sources reveal that even Tokyo deplored the dreadful waste of humans in this fanatical striving, which sets the broader mass of men wholly outside the legal community.
It was too inefficient, too radical, even for their rival conquerors.
The official, chilling acknowledgement came in Rosenberg's 1958 pamphlet, noting that the Reich had almost achieved our objectives and the final solution of the African problem. Think about the timeline here. This scale of genocide, almost completed in barely 15 years. It's meant to demonstrate the awful, hyper-efficient power of the Nazi machine.
And this brings us to the devastating intellectual and philosophical core of the regime as diagnosed by someone who lives within it. Rudolf Wegener, the Abwehr agent operating as Mr. Baines. When he lands in the PSA, he offers this internal diagnosis of the ruling class's psychotic streak.
Wegener argues that the Nazi madness is rooted in a fundamental spiritual confusion, a break from actual reality. They are purposely cruel, ignoring huge swaths of the world because their vision is entirely cosmic, based purely on abstraction.
Race, land, Volk, Blut, air, blood, honor.
If we were to look at a good person in front of them, they wouldn't see this good man. They would only see the abstract reality of air itself. The individual person is invisible to them.
They only exist as a vessel for these grand, cold concepts.
And this leads to the darkest part of Baines's analysis, their fatal identification with the inanimate. They believe life is merely a temporary interval, an Augenblick, a brief flicker in the vast cosmic process. They see the universe hurrying on, crushing life back into the granite and methane.
It's the ultimate nihilism, right? They identify with the non-living cosmic decay and they want to aid nature. They don't see themselves as creating life or meaning, but as accelerating the universe's return to inert matter.
Precisely. They believe they are godlike, identifying with God's power, not in the sense of creation, but in the sense of pure, amoral cosmic force. Wegener concludes it's not traditional hubris, but a profound confusion where man has not eaten God, God has eaten man.
They've been consumed by the vast, cold, abstract force they worship.
This realization that the rulers of half the planet are fundamentally psychotic instruments of cosmic decay That is the bedrock upon which all their political instability rests. Because if the philosophy is madness and the technology is absolute, you have a regime that is intrinsically unstable and constantly seeking catastrophic, unnecessary conflict.
Which is exactly where we pivot, because that instability is currently peaking, creating a high-stakes espionage situation that brings the entire global order to the brink.
Okay, so the fragile equilibrium of the Axis world is shattered the moment Chancellor Morton Bormann dies. The political vacuum is immediate, and the sources show this intense global concern over who will replace him.
And the news breaks swiftly. Dr. Goebbels has been named Reich's chancellor in a surprise solution. There are simultaneous rumors that Hermann Goering might replace Heydrich as police chief. And this signals a complete upheaval of the internal German power structure, which is being watched obsessively by Tokyo.
Tokyo's intelligence analysis is incredibly sophisticated. They categorize the potential leaders. So R. Heydrich, Dr. Seyss-Inquart, who is responsible for the African Holocaust and the attempts at Slavic sterilization, therefore most hated, and H. Goering are categorized as the worst, the reckless ideologues.
Right. And conversely, Bivon Chirac, who was seen as the idealist who tried to mitigate genocide and who led the monumental Mediterranean draining project, is considered part of the best, alongside Dr. Goebbels. It's a pragmatic analysis based on who poses the least risk of global annihilation.
And Tokyo knows exactly why Germany is so dangerous. They view Germany's strategy of constantly reducing conquered populations to slaves as an economic catastrophe, one that only their miracle weapons and hyper-technology can sustain. This dependency on tech leads their leaders to be perpetually reckless, always seeking these tour de force adventures.
It's a political death wish that threatens Japan as much as it threatens the conquered territories.
This internal struggle is why Rudolf Wegener, our Abwehr agent, German military intelligence, is operating under the alias Mr. Baines and has risked a supersonic flight across the planet.
He is here for a secret meeting with a Mr. Yatabe, who is actually General Tadeki, the former imperial chief of staff.
The paranoia inherent in this deep dive is evident in their communication method. They use a highly complex, metaphor-based, poetic illusion cipher. It's based on Gilbert and Sullivan's Pinafore, with phrases like skim milk in his diet, which refers to the doctrine, and things are seldom what they seem.
Which is the obvious theme, yeah. They adopted this poetic style not because the Japanese are sensitive to art, but specifically to baffle the Reich monitors, who they know can crack any literal code instantaneously. The German technological surveillance is so comprehensive that only abstraction and illusion can possibly hide their intentions.
Wegener's cover is as a plastic salesman, but his true mission is deadly serious. He is pleading for Japanese intervention in the German domestic power struggle. He represents the German factions, likely the Abwehr and moderate elements of the Wehrmacht, who oppose the SD's rise.
And what they are specifically trying to stop is Operation Dandelion. We have to pause here because this is the geopolitical bomb hidden in the sources. Operation Dandelion is the undeclared secret plan by the most fanatical Nazis, the SD faction, likely led by Heydrich, to launch a preemptive nuclear strike against Japan.
It's the ultimate escalation, the victor planning to annihilate their co-victor. Wegener's arguing that the rise of the SD makes this inevitable, and only Japan, by supporting a more moderate faction, can stop it.
The Japanese are deeply reluctant to align with any German faction, especially supporting those who are ultimately affiliated with the Sicherheitsdienst, the SD, which General Tadeki correctly labels as the most malignant portion of German society.
But the clock is ticking. The SD knows Wegener is in the PSA. Freiherr Hugo Reissue, the German consul, who personally despises the SD, receives direct confirmation from the newly installed Chancellor Goebbels to cooperate with the SD in apprehending Wegener.
And Reissue views the local SD commander, Kreutz von Mir, as a low-class Bavarian thug, but he has to obey. This is the moment where the political abstraction collides violently with personal morality right in Mr. Tagomi's office.
The sources detail the attempted kidnapping with this almost absurd precision. SD agents, relying on their belief in the invisibility of low-status figures, are disguised as non-threatening types. We hear they are dressed as violinists and divinity students. And they attempt a violent entry into Tagomi's office during the meeting with Wegener and General Tadeki.
And this is the violent climax that utterly shatters Mr. Tagomi, the gentle trade official who had been trying to maintain order through bureaucracy and protocol. Tagomi is a kind, perhaps Buddhist-influenced man, strongly opposed to taking life.
But he reacts instinctively. He grabs the nearest weapon, the antique Colt .44 artifact. The very one Childen had just discovered was a forgery made by Frank. He fires, shooting both SD agents, killing one instantly and hideously injuring the other. It is one violent, visceral act that sums up the entire dilemma of this
Oh,
world.
wait. So the kindly Japanese official who values order and peace kills two Nazi agents in self-defense using a firearm that is itself a documented fraud made by a Jewish artist trying to survive in a conquered world.
That's the whole dilemma summed up in one terrifying, blood-soaked moment.
It is. And the personal fallout for Tagomi is instant, and it is complete. He suffers a massive attack of vertigo and a mental breakdown. The evil is actual like cement, he realizes, and he had to take two lives to save one, which his logical, balanced mind cannot make sense of.
He immediately retreats into the only internal order he can find, the rigid, finite, perfect structure of art. Specifically, recalling Gilbert and Sullivan's The Gondoliers. Now a gavotte performed sedately, capital both, capital both. It's a mental life raft made of formal, predictable, artistic structure.
He wanders out of the Nippon Times building completely incapable of functioning, questioning whether this entire struggle, fighting alongside his former enemy, a German spy, against his former ally's political faction, the Nazis, was simply a decomposing nightmare parody of problems customarily faced in the course of existence. He cannot reconcile the moral choice with the hideous reality.
This descent into chaos pushes him, and indeed other characters, toward a desperate search for stability and guidance that transcends the immediate political mess. And for that, they all turn to an ancient external source of truth. The Oracle.
The I Ching, the Book of Changes, is perhaps the most constant grounding element in all the sources. It is not viewed as superstition. It's an integral part of decision-making for Tagomi, for Frink, and for Juliana. It represents a 5,000-year-old tradition codified long before European intellectual history even began.
The sources emphasize that the characters see it as a cosmology and a science.
Yeah.
This isn't just throwing coins, it's rooted in the idea of synchronicity.
Exactly. The concept is that the act of casting the euro stocks, or the coins, momentarily aligns the microcosm, the individual and their query, with the macrocosm, the universe. The result is not an arbitrary prediction, but a statement about the current cosmic flow that is uniquely relevant to that specific moment. Frink realizes, after consulting it, that his factory, the Japanese trade missions, the African vocide, Martian exploration, Juliana, all of it is fundamentally connected in that singular moment in time.
Let's look at how this impacts individual choices, starting with Frink and his jewelry business. When he consults the Oracle about starting his new venture with McCarthy, the overall judgment he receives is highly favorable. Tai, peace, or Tachu, the taming power of the great, promising fortune and that the low will be raised up.
But the moving line introduces an immediate, shattering contradiction. It relates to hexagram 12, pi, or stagnation, and it warns of doom. The wall falls back into the moat. Use no army now. It's an unmistakable warning of future catastrophe, perhaps the looming Third World War.
How do you reconcile personal good fortune with universal annihilation? Frink, through the lens of synchronicity, concludes that the positive judgment is specifically for his work alone, his small act of creation. But the catastrophic moving line is a warning for all mankind. He decides he must proceed, work actively, create art, and plow along, right up until the point the wall falls. His art becomes a defiance of the cosmic decay Baines recognized in the Nazis.
Tagomi, too, seeks validation and guidance in his crisis. Immediately after the SD attack attempt, his reading is terrifyingly reflective of his experience. He receives hexagram 51, shock, followed by hexagram 47, oppression.
The reading speaks of having his nose and feet cut off, an oppression at the hands of the man with the purple knee bands. It's a perfect, poetic summary of the unexpected violence, his moral mutilation, and the political threat he faces from powerful, possibly German, forces.
It validates his feeling of distress and advises him to make offerings. The Oracle provides structure to his chaos.
This search for meaning in the face of chaos brings us back to the question of art and authenticity, particularly the esoteric concept of Wu.
Childen, still reeling from the fake cult revelation, tries to sell Frink's contemporary Ed Frank jewelry on consignment to the wealthy collector Paul Kasura, and Childen tries to appeal to the Japanese tradition, claiming the pieces possess Wu, or innate spirit, that intangible life essence residing in a unique handmade object.
Kasura's response is a masterclass in philosophical cruelty. He immediately dismisses the idea of supporting American creative effort. Instead of buying the unique silver spiral pins, he suggests mass-producing them in plastic or base metal in the Orient, turning them into cheap good luck charms or amulets for the poor masses of Latin America.
Chulden is absolutely horrified. He realizes Kasura is demonstrating that American creativity is fit only to be a prototype for foreign-made junk. Kasura then delivers the final blow, challenging Chulden. Will he be the superior man who appreciates the authentic Wu, or the inferior man who adapts to the brutal market reality and profits from the plastic imitations?
And Chulden, already shaken by the forgery crisis, realizes the Japanese are not trying to absorb their culture. They are trying to prove that American products are models for disposable waste.
But the Ed Frank jewelry finds its Wu in the hands of Mr. Tagomi. After his violent breakdown, unable to function, Tagomi wanders the city searching for something to anchor his subjective, collapsing reality. He stumbles back to Childen's store and buys one of Frank's silver spiral pins, the very piece Kasura had dismissed as a model for plastic amulets.
And holding this small, hand-wrought object, Tagomi achieves an incredible state of mystical clarity. He perceives the art object as a unification of the cosmos. Yin, the feminine, is the metal, the earth, the darkness, decay, the time that was. Yang, the masculine, is the fire, the light, the future, and life.
The artist's function, he realizes, is to take the dead mineral rock from dark, silent earth, that's yin, and using the transformative force of fire, yang, create a shining, light-reflecting form from sky. The small piece of jewelry is a microcosm that brings the dead to life.
This is the definitive answer to Wyndham Matson's Zippo lighter argument. Tagomi proves that the object does have an aura, a spirit, a historicity, not conferred by paper, but by the intentionality and dedication of the artist. By focusing on this tangible, unique piece of art, Tagomi restores his internal balance, finding a truth that the political world denied him.
It's the ultimate statement that genuine creativity and intent can hold back the tides of cynicism and cosmic decay. But while Tagomi and Frink find their truth in ancient wisdom and small-scale art, another character finds her direction in the most dangerous place of all, a counter-history novel.
Right. The Grasshopper Lies Heavy, written by Hawthorne Ebenson, is a literary lightning rod in this world. It's banned in the German East, where all counter-propaganda is forbidden, but it's hugely popular in the Japanese PSA, and it's circulated even in the home islands.
The premise is simple, yet revolutionary for the people living in 1962. It depicts an alternate reality where the Allies won World War II, FDR survived assassination, Pearl Harbor was averted, and Churchill defeated Rommel at Stalingrad.
Joe Cinadella, the Italian-American veteran who was traveling with Juliana, provides a chilling analysis of the book from a fascist Nazi perspective. He dismisses the Allied victory as entirely dependent on Italy's cowardly betrayal and rejects the resulting U.S.-British world as lacking soul or spirituality.
He argues that the Allied world would be a mere plutocracy, focused only on making money and accumulating wealth, rather than social reform, welfare, or the grand vision of the Reich. He echoes the Nazi Führerprinzip, the principle of leadership, arguing that true purpose comes from the deed, and theory must derive from action, not economic calculation.
As they drive toward Cheyenne, where Ebenson lives, Juliana makes a terrifying realization. Joe is not just a disgruntled veteran. He is a Nazi SD agent, a killer sent to assassinate Ebenson, and she is merely the lure the dark, libidinous girl type Ebenson is known to be attracted to.
Faced with this sudden, lethal threat, Juliana, who has been adrift for much of the story, consults the I Ching. This becomes her absolute moment of choice, guided by external fate.
Her reading is hexagram 42, increase, changing to hexagram 43, breakthrough. The general message is one of urgent, necessary action. It furthers one to cross the great water. But the warning is crucial to understanding the threat. 10 pairs of tortoises cannot oppose him, suggesting the killer is too powerful to be stopped conventionally.
Right. Yet the judgment of hexagram 43 gives her the command. One must resolutely make the matter known at the court of the king. It must be announced truthfully. The oracle commands her to warn Ebenson immediately.
She confronts Joe in their Denver hotel room, discovering his hidden 2-watt transmitter receiver, the proof he is an operative coordinating an assassination. Driven by the oracle's command and sheer desperation, she kills him using a simple hotel razor blade before fleeing for Cheyenne. It's a desperate act of violence that parallels Tagomi's, but hers is commanded by fate, not reaction.
She finally arrives at Hawthorne Ebenson's residence. It's not the fortified high castle she imagined. That was an alias he used, having abandoned the actual fortified location due to a phobia related to religious imagery. She doesn't waste time. She asks the ultimate question. Did the oracle write the book?
Ebenson is evasive, but his wife, Caroline, confirms the truth, pulling back the final curtain. She reveals that Ebenson used the I Ching lines to make every single major decision in the book. The historic period, the subject, the characters, the plot points, and even predicting the novel's success. He simply did the typing.
So the novel, the piece of fiction, is actually a channeling of the cosmos. Juliana asks the next most crucial question: why? Why did the Oracle choose to write a counter-history novel about the Axis losing? What is it trying to tell them that it cannot say directly?
This is the climax of the entire deep dive. Juliana cast the coins for the very last time, asking the Oracle, "Why did you write The Grasshopper Lies Heavy? What are we supposed to learn?"
And the final hexagram is Chung Fu, hexagram 61, inner truth. This implies unequivocally that the world depicted in The Grasshopper Lies Heavy, the world where the Allies won, is the actual, true reality, or at least one closer to it than the nightmare they currently inhabit.
The fiction is the truth. The horrific, technically perfect, politically toxic world ruled by the Axis powers is, in a profound cosmic sense, the grand forgery. It's the lie they are all struggling within.
That changes everything we've discussed. The crisis of authenticity in the art market, the philosophical madness of the Nazis, the desperate search for order, all of it was an attempt to reconcile their lives with a reality that the cosmos itself suggests is fraudulent.
We've traced a complex, multi-layered tapestry today, following the paths of commerce, philosophical despair, geopolitical espionage, and personal crisis. The common thread binding these disparate lives was the I Ching, which proved itself not just a fortune teller, but a cosmic scriptwriter, capable of creating a novel to reveal a hidden greater truth.
The sources show us how fragile subjective reality truly is. Mr. Tagomi's world collapsed entirely when he committed that violent act, only for him to restore it by refocusing on the Ed Frank art object. That small spiral of silver uniting yin and yang became his anchor against the geopolitical madness.
And Juliana's journey illustrates the power of surrender to external wisdom. By abandoning her own self-judgment and following the urgent, sometimes violent commands of the Oracle, she was able to pierce the political propaganda and the disguises, performing an act that was dictated by the cosmos to reveal the fundamental truth of their existence.
The supreme irony is that in a world sustained by technological fact and historical certainty, the ultimate revelation of truth came through fiction, revealing the nature of their reality as merely one possible, terrifying, and inauthentic selection from an infinite number of choices.
That leaves us with a final provocative thought for you, the learner. If, as the sources suggest, the very fabric of our reality, down to the specific choices we make and the world we believe we inhabit, is just one possibility selected from a vast, infinite number. And if an ancient text can dictate a plot to reveal a better world, who or what then is truly making the ultimate decision about which reality is real? And how often do we, like the characters in the PSA, live within the forgery, mistaking the propaganda for the authentic, simply because the paper or the political machine tells us so?